Hello there. Greetings and welcome to another episode of Time of Reckoning. Today I want to spend a little time scrutinizing a topic that I have not heard much deliberations on. And it is going to speak to the constitution of a sovereign nation. The constitution of a nation, which is usually its supreme law, have you ever wondered why a constitution is so binding and successive generations find it so hard to effect changes to a constitution? Take, for example, we often hear about the United States Constitution, and that great nation placed so much emphasis on adhering to their constitution. For example, you hear about the First Amendment to the Constitution, then you hear about the Second Amendment, the first being that of freedom of speech, and the Second Amendment being the right to bear arms. Let's think about the latter, the right to bear arms. There is no question about it that the United States gun policy is wreaking a kind of havoc in that society that one wonders, why does common sense not prevail to, to clearly rein in the unwanted loss of lives in that country by gun wielding people? And that might include even the police as well. Huh? The First Amendment, the right to the right to freedom of speech. When you hear the way that people, citizens of that country, speak about their leaders, speak about their fellow man, the type of profanity that might be used under the guise of freedom of speech and freedom of expression. When you listen to former President Donald Trump using language inciting violence, and you hear that that is in keeping with his freedom of speech. And so you wonder where you draw the line. Where do you draw the line? Now, it is not my intention to spend this time of this video talking about the United States Constitution, because their Constitution has some similarities to Constitution everywhere else, not in terms of the language, but in terms of how successive generations treat to the Constitution. It is like a crime to change aspects of the Constitution. You know, you will hear people talk about the founding fathers. You hear people talk about the father of independence and what his will and wishes were. And because the father of independence might did this or say that, it's like it's cast in stone and is unchangeable. I want to use the question of the Constitution to critique a little bit the book we call the Bible, sacred writings of ancient times, because there is a striking similarity with how people treat to a constitution and how they treat to the Bible, especially how religion, those who feel that they are guardians of the Bible, how they treat to the scriptures. Christian religions see themselves as custodians of the Bible. It's as though they own it. While everybody can at will own a copy of the Bible, the Christian religion sees itself as the authority on the scriptures and have the right to interpret it. Of course, we know that religions vary from one to another and how they feel about the things that are in the Bible. There are some religions who feel that they have a right to unofficially amend part of what is in the Bible. There are some other religions who believe that no one has the right to amend what is in there. You have to follow what is there regardless. Let's take a few examples. Those of us, for example, who were born in the 60s and beyond, before the 60s, we are accustomed to a religious tradition where the preaching against sin, sinful conduct, and sinful behavior was so very common. It literally inundates sermons of that era. There were strict dress code for godly women. They have to be dressed differently. They have to groom their hair differently. And so it was believed those days that you could just see a woman and you could tell she's a Christian from the way she appears. And of course, people will tell you that it is recorded in the Bible that Christians are to dress modestly. And so it was the norm then. Then, no sooner the minister, the reverend, the pastor, whoever presides at the church meeting, the sermon would be inundated with the language of sin, what was sinful, what was wrong, what was right. But if you go to modern churches, churches today, churches of the 80s, the 90s, and now the 21st century, you long to hear a word called sin. You long to hear a word called wrong. It's as though those languages have disappeared from the religious vernacular. When those of us who are acquainted with the Bible in its ancient form, that is to say, as is recorded there, we learn that certain sexual practices were wrong. For example, we learn that the example of Sodom and Gomorrah condemns homosexuality forever. But needless to say that there are some religions that have amended that part of the Bible. And today, in some part of the world, you just cannot criticize same-sex couples. In fact, while in the Bible we hear about husband and wife, it is common today to hear that a man is married and the two of them are husbands. So you hear about the man and his husband. You hear about the woman and his wife. Now those things, they're either amendment to the Bible as a religious constitution, or it is just a new thing where people have abandoned the Bible, or at least some part of it, and just make new rules. I have commented in a video not long ago that Jehovah's Witnesses, for example, refuse to deviate from the fact that if an allegation against a member is not backed up by 2 or 3 witnesses, they can't do anything about it. And that is now presenting a serious issue with child sexual molestation. You know? So the question is, has the time come for the Bible to be amended? Does anyone have the right to amend what is in the Bible in keeping with a modern world? Or do those who feel that they are godly are duty bound to hold on to biblical tradition irrespective? Off the cuff of my head, I can recall a few things that I will share with you in this video. 1, the prophet Jeremiah, in Jeremiah chapter 31, said he was prophesying under divine instruction. And he prophesied, though he was living under what we now come to know as the Mosaic law, he said that the time would come, says God, that a new covenant would be made. Now, there was, when Jeremiah was alive, a covenant that was in effect. And that covenant came into existence according to biblical theology when Moses came out of Egypt, delivered according to the book by God's direction. A covenant was made at Mount Horeb. And that covenant lasted, according to the thesis, until Jesus Christ inaugurated a new covenant when he took a loaf in a plate and took some liquid into a chalice or a vessel. And some person feel that what was in there was wine, since the Bible says a product of the vine. Some person say it was water, whatever was in it. But a new covenant came into effect at that time. So it could be said that Jeremiah in chapter 31 of the book bearing his name had predicted an amendment to that divine constitution of a new covenant then. Huh? But Jesus, if you recall, close to the time when he would inaugurate this new covenant, Jesus gave Peter an instrument. Jesus put an instrument in Peter's hand. The Bible said it's a key. And Jesus told Peter that this was the key to the kingdom. And he told Peter that with that key, he can open heaven and shut it. He said, whatever he loose in heaven will be loose on earth, vice versa as well. And whatever he bound on earth will be bound in heaven. That seemed to suggest to me that divine authorization was given to Peter. And if there would be any successor to Peter, because it's very logical that there are successors to religious movement. So Peter would die and he would pass that key on to somebody. You know, of course, we know the Catholics believe that it is the Pope, the succession of popes. They all have this key. Whatever the truth about the matter is, it seems to me that that key would give the religious organization the right to effect amendment and changes, practical ones, to what is recorded in the Bible. So I am not surprised to see that the churches have effectively, for the most part, especially the older churches, have effectively, what you would say, make amendment to the laws and same sex that no longer is applicable. In the Bible, brother-in-law marriage was an obligation that was part of the law then, that have long been, adjusted, that have long been amended. And now it looks so wrong if her brother died and then he'd go and take his wife and marry. But that was norm at one time. So when you look at all the things that used to happen, and if we could talk about the animal sacrifices and all of those things, that those things have been amended. So ask seriously, why are some things amended virtually with impunity, and some other things seem so difficult to amend? When the Bible says 2 or 3 witnesses, in the case of sexual molestation or sexual abuse, can the second witness be DNA testing? That was never done in Bible times. That science, that technology was not available then. So the things that require 2 persons, fingerprinting wasn't available then. So if somebody said somebody break in somebody's house, then you can do your forensics and test to see if fingerprints can be found of that person who's accused. And if one person see that person, and the fingerprinting technology, the forensics can also back up the fact that that person's hand is prints are found there, then that may be the second witness that you need. So, for example, to those who might be Jehovah's Witnesses, I would ask, might the second witness in a sex allegation case be DNA testing? Think about that. For the other groups, I am saying, all the things that you feel that you're unable to do because the Bible said this or said that, might there be the possibility of amendments? How much amendments are needed? Where do we stop? You know? So I thought I would throw this whole question of the human written constitution of a nation with the divine authorization that we claim the Bible might be, and ask ourselves if, like a constitution that can be amended, do we amend the parts of the Bible to reflect modern day civilization? You know, it's a thought provoking matter. I'd like to hear your feedback on it. I am sure you're going to find this matter something that is worthy of pondering. You know, so the Bible, you know, do we have to treat it the way it was written in ancient times? You know, we don't do a number of things that was in there, and we simply say, well, the arrangement changed. So how is it that some change and some seem as if it cannot change? Where do we draw the line? Who determines what can and what cannot change? You know. So think about that. As you reflect on your own national constitution, those who wrote it, and why is it that, you know, decades after, prime ministers or presidents find it so difficult to assembly, you know, a group, whether of parliamentarians or of intellectuals or whoever, to seriously look at constitution and say, well, that don't make sense anymore. You know, these changes are very slow to make, but they can make a big difference in people's lives, don't they? So until the next time, it's nice talking to you again. Thank you for listening. And remember to hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, and the reasoning will continue. So long.